I never thought 20 years of my life could vanish in the blink of an eye. But that's exactly what happened on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle. High above the rain-streaked streets. In a boardroom that smelled faintly of stale coffee and polished wood. The glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the city skyline, but inside, I felt smaller than ever. Like this whole place was built to swallow someone like me. The hum of the air conditioning buzzed louder than the whispers of the board members behind me. My palms were slick with sweat, even though the office felt cold enough to bite. Every shuffle of leather shoes, every scratch of a pen, even the low vibration of a phone, it pressed down on me. Like the weight of every microaggression I'd faced as one of the few black leaders in this room. I sat frozen, gripping the armrests. Across the table, Richard Hale, our CEO, leaned back, eyes sharp as obsidian, and let the folder slide toward me. His voice was quiet, but it hit me like a thunderclap. Elijah, it's over. We're moving on. It felt like a fist to the stomach. Not a conversation, not a negotiation, just a cold, blunt end. 20 years, early mornings, late nights, missed birthdays, crises I solved while others slept, reduced to 6 words. My knees went weak, my heart refused to settle into a normal rhythm. Beside him, a new face, Madison Hale, barely 23, perched on the edge of her chair like she owned the air. Her designer heels clicked against the floor, a mocking metronome to my racing thoughts. That confident, almost unbearable smile said it all. I already own this place. And soon, you won't exist in it. I remembered the first time I joined this company, how Ayanna Mitchell, one of the few black executives I'd looked up to, had guided me through the subtle biases, the whispered doubts from colleagues who couldn't see beyond the color of my skin. I remembered mentors in the black tech community who had told me, Elijah, they can take your title, but they can't take your skill, your mind, your excellence. That memory flickered now, a small spark in the dark. The folder lay heavy in my hands. Not because of its weight, manila is light, but because of what it meant. Every signature, every stamp, every word screamed, you are no longer needed. But they didn't know me. They never did. 20 years of loyalty. Of building. Of keeping this company alive while no one noticed. Felt erased, but I was still here. I walked out like a ghost. Legs heavy with betrayal. The hallway was silent except for the click of my heels. I passed offices where colleagues peeked up from their screens. Some looked away. Some shot quick pitying glances. No one came forward. Not yet, but I had Devontae King in my corner. My mentor from the local black tech network. Reminding me of who I was. And who I could still be. At my desk, everything was as I left it. My faded leather chair. My worn notebooks filled with notes. Codes. Late-night diagrams. The little chipped mug I'd carried for years still sat there. I touched it, remembering nights curled around my laptop. Coffee cold, fluorescent lights harsh, alone, but never powerless. Every late night, every crisis, every victory invisible to the world had built something they could never erase. Me. The spark beneath the shock was growing. Betrayal had lit it, and as Richard Hale and his niece thought they had won, I knew this was the beginning, not the end. Somewhere deep inside, a pulse of clarity began to rise. I remembered the clause I'd tucked into the licensing agreements years ago, hidden under layers of legalese. Overlooked by the board, even by Richard himself. If the original architect was ever removed without cause, all operational rights reverted to me. Back then, it had felt like a quiet insurance policy, a safeguard for the day loyalty alone might not be enough. Now, that clause was a lifeline. And Richard, in all his arrogance, had just signed it himself. Every move he made to discard me had unknowingly strengthened my hand. Not revenge, not gloating, just recognition. I had always been the foundation, and foundations don't crumble that easily. I packed my desk deliberately. Every item held meaning. A photo of my niece at her first piano recital. The hand-scribbled calendar tracking deadlines and crises. The half-dead succulent I'd kept alive between system crashes. Sweat, late nights, survival, unseen by them, but mine. Madison Hale passed by, barely glancing. She snapped a photo, flash slicing the hallway like she was capturing a predator. Her smirk didn't touch her eyes. She thought I was broken. She was wrong. I let her believe she had the upper hand. That was her mistake. By the time I reached the elevator, the building felt different. The hum of the air conditioning, once oppressive, now whispered. Fluorescent lights no longer weighed down, they guided me. My badge, years of trust condensed into a piece of plastic, felt heavy in my pocket. Just plastic, but a door to places others couldn't even imagine. My secret advantage. As the elevator descended, memories surfaced. The shipment stuck in Germany that threatened millions. The server meltdown in Singapore. The countless nights calling partners across time zones while the world slept. Everything I built, still humming under my control. Outside, the rain-soaked Seattle streets smelled of wet concrete and pine. Umbrellas bobbed past, oblivious. I felt invisible, but that invisibility was power. They couldn't see the threads I controlled, the leverage I held, the storm inside the company. The one Richard thought he'd tamed by dismissing me was just beginning. 2 blocks later, a small café became my refuge. Box of my life under my arm. I ordered black coffee, no sugar, no milk. I stirred it slowly, letting a faint smile touch my lips. The calm before the storm. The quiet before the reckoning. They thought it was the end. I knew better. A plan formed, not chaotic, not vengeful, just deliberate. Patience, observation, every arrogance, every misstep, every oversight would become a key. With that first sip, I felt the pulse of quiet power, the first heartbeat of what was coming next. This was only the beginning. I settled at the worn wooden table. Espresso machine humming, chatter blending into a comforting background. Rain tapped the window like a heartbeat I could sync with. My laptop opened, old adrenaline stirring. Betrayal was fresh, but it no longer held power. I accessed a secure account long dormant. Threads I'd woven years ago, partners, suppliers, engineers, all connected through agreements they trusted me to manage. One click could test a reaction. Gently nudge the fragile system they assumed ran without me. Not chaos, not revenge, just measurement. Espresso aroma mixed with the scent of rain. Grounding me. Cold metal of the laptop. Smooth leather bag. Rough wooden table. Reminders that I was still here. Still present. Still capable. I drafted my first test. A simple notice to a partner in Germany. Sent as if automatically from the system. License verification incomplete. Original architect required. Satisfaction shivered through me. Richard pacing. Madison smiling for Instagram. They had no idea they were blind. The ping came fast. Clarification requested. Perfect. Just as I thought. The network didn't move without me. Quiet affirmation warmed something deep inside. Not triumph. Certainty. Every connection I'd spun, every trust built painstakingly, remained intact. I didn't rush back. I could watch. I could wait. Leaning back, chair scraping softly, rain softened to drizzle. The skyline emerged through gray haze. Streets reflected neon like scattered jewels. Offices behind me, chaos. Unanswered emails, ringing phones, executives scrambling. Someone they relied on, gone. The café door opened, letting in cold air. The chatter of strangers. I let it wash over me. Untethered, free from deadlines and boardroom oppression. Free, yet dangerously connected. And in that freedom, clarity, patience, observation, precision. Every misstep, every assumption of control, would become an opportunity. I sipped my coffee slow, letting the heat seep in, warming more than my hands, my chest, my mind, my focus. Outside, umbrellas bobbed down the wet pavement like tiny shields. Madison, Richard, smirks, dismissals. They thought the story was over. They had no idea it was just starting. I closed my laptop for a beat, hands resting on the smooth wood. The storm outside had passed, but inside the company, the storm was forming, and I was at the center. Invisible, patient, ready, one move at a time, one thread at a time. First ripple made, no turning back. Next morning, sunlight barely sliced through the Seattle fog. Balcony, coffee in hand, city below unaware of the quiet chaos brewing in the offices I left behind. People rushed past, umbrellas Steaming cups. Normalcy. But I could see it forming. The first crack. I watched it. Steady. Distant. Ping. Frankfurt. Logistics partner. Shipment halted. Original architect required. Please advise. Calm satisfaction. Not fear. The network frozen without me. Just as I'd planned. I leaned back. Leather creaking. Imagining Richard pacing. Glass walls reflecting frustration. Assistants fumbling. Madison. Flipping through a glossy report. Hair perfect, but just slightly trembling. I smiled. Slow. Controlled. Not gloating. Just observing. I tapped a careful reply. Measured. Precise. Not fixing the problem. Just visible. Every chain of command flailing without me. Calls unanswered. Instructions misread. Meetings dragging. My absence. A mirror of their incompetence. Coffee aroma from downstairs mingled with rain-soaked streets. I felt the tension rising in offices unseen. I was the calm in the storm. By mid-morning, Singapore pinged. Same message. Canada, Japan, Mexico. The web I'd built meticulously. Frozen. I took a slow sip. Warmth. Pulse steady. I closed my eyes for a second, remembering nights hunched over terminals. Fingers aching. Eyes stinging. Smell of burnt midnight oil. Rough spreadsheets. Metallic tang of server rooms. Every detail. Every sacrifice. Proof I was the only one who could hold this network together. I'd been discarded, and now without me, nothing moved. Buzz. Mia, one of my engineers, a quiet believer. Elijah, they're panicking. Chaos. You were right. I let it hang. Not applause. Not recognition. Just proof. The system, the lifeblood, was still mine. City hum. Drizzle tapping. Faint street construction. I imagined Richard in his office. Voice cracking. Servers silent. Suppliers stalled. Madison, golden-faced emblem of nepotism. Gripping her tablet. Hashtags useless against real expertise. By noon, cracks widened. Reports through quiet channels. Meetings stalled. Inventory frozen. Staff whispering. Stock wobbling. Panic radiating, but unseen. Uncontrollable. Laptop closed slowly. Fingers brushing smooth metal. Rain stopped. City shimmered under weak sunlight. And there I was, watching the storm I'd sparked without a muscle moved. No display of anger or triumph. Final thought on the balcony. Patience. Observation. Precision. They thought my story ended. It hadn't. One crack today. One misstep tomorrow. The structure would show its weakness. And when that day came, I wouldn't rush. I wouldn't panic. I'd be ready. Before dawn, phone buzzed. Emails. Messages. Notifications. A quiet alarm. Dominoes falling. Germany first. Shipment frozen. Original architect required. Richard's office. Glass walls. Empty Starbucks cups. Assistants pacing. Phones pressed. No answers. Furious. Calm. Singapore. Canada. Japan. Mexico. Same message. Like a mantra across continents. License inactive. Original architect required. Musical. Almost. The rhythm of panic unfolding without lifting a finger. Decades of work. Preserved. Now unraveling in their hands. I could almost hear the keyboards clacking in my head, the desperate tapping. The misfired commands. The groans from frustrated execs. Every terminal frozen. Assistants running in circles. Meetings dragging on. Pointless without the one who held it all together. The network I'd built. Countless late nights. Coffee-stained notes. Bleary-eyed calculations. Paused. Waiting. For me. My apartment smelled of roasted coffee and rain-soaked concrete. I sipped slow. Warmth seeping in. Satisfaction. With a hint of bitter years of unrecognized grind. Not revenge. Not gloating. Just truth. Just observation. Buzz. Mia. My engineer. Quiet supporter since day one. Elijah. Chaos. Everyone's lost. You were right. I smiled. Small. Subtle. Validation doesn't need claps. It needs timing. Perfect timing. By mid-morning, the ripple spread. Rumors whispered through offices. Without Elijah, nothing works. Emails sent twice. Calls returned with confusion. Stock wobbling. Investors uneasy. Panic contagious. But I stayed apart. Calm. Observing. I pictured Madison. Tablet in hand. Hair flawless. Rehearsed smile. Cracking. Clicking through slides she barely understood. Buzzwords hollow, meaningless against reality she never built. Servers frozen. Contracts stalled. London. Toronto. Frantic calls. I smiled slow, patient, watching. I closed my eyes. Let the memory wash over me. Servers humming in the dead of night. Stale coffee smell. Monitor glow burning eyes. Keystrokes fixing problems no one else saw. It all led here. The company unraveling. And me, outside, calm, prepared. Ping. News alert. Global supply chain at standstill. Original architect missing. Twitter lit. LinkedIn buzzing. Employees whispering stalled shipments. Delayed launches. Hashtag bring back Elijah trending quietly among insiders. The world was noticing. Deep breath. Rain easing. Asphalt. Coffee scent lingering. Sip. Every falling domino confirmed what I always knew. No title. No badge. No polished smile replaces decades of dedication. Experience isn't borrowed. It's earned. By evening, the impact was clear. Loyal colleagues reporting. Frozen production lines. Halted shipments. Investors panicking. Richard frantic. Madison desperate on calls. Every misstep. Every frozen server. Every confused partner. Proof of my invisible work. And still, I waited. Silent. Shielded. Patience a weapon. I could intervene. But I didn't. Observation was strategy. Let the dominoes fall. Let the structure crumble. Let reality show its cracks. Mug down. Stretch. Tension eased. Storm growing. But I wasn't in it. Outside. Watching. Knowing the weak points. In that knowledge, power. Tomorrow, the board will see. Madison will learn limits of inherited authority. Richard will understand control was never his to wield. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. Conference room smelled of burnt coffee and fear. Fluorescent hum buzzed like an alarm. I could hear the heartbeat of execs, heels tapping, pens scratching, voices flailing. Richard sat at the head, tie loose, pale, jaw tight. Madison at the front, tablet in hand, projecting flickering slides, graphs, arrows, colors, confidence they didn't feel. So polished, so little substance. Let's stay calm. Richard stammered, voice shaking. We have contingency plans. Hollow words. Madison nodded, smile fading. Panic creeping. Chairs squeak. Fingers drum. Phones buzzing. Servers frozen. Emails unanswered. Shipments delayed. Domino effect. Real and rising. Madison tapping tablet. Desperation growing. We've identified the glitch. Database. Override. Legal says. Voice cracked. Armor falling. Screen flickered. Real system invisible to them. Richard muttered. Rubbed temples. Call London. Call Singapore. Move. Voice sharp. Frantic. Confusion ruled. Assistants sprinted. Phones pressed. Papers flying. Directors whispering. Nobody knew. I let a corner of my lips curl. Not revenge. Not rage. Just quiet observation. Power I built over decades now undeniable. Visible in hesitation. Wrong steps. The room unraveling. Thread by thread. And I? Outside. Untouched. A red alert flashed on Madison's slide. Production lines are stalled. Partners are holding shipments. Investors are. Her voice trailed off. Panic creeping in. Every polished word cracking under reality. Richard slammed his hand on the table. The room jumped. I need answers. Now. Eyes darted around. Directors. Assistants. Board members. Nobody had them. Control was gone. They had let go of the one person who had always held it all together. I could almost taste the fear in the room. Sweat prickling their necks. Hearts racing. Every polished suit and rehearsed smile worth nothing without the knowledge they assumed they owned. Some directors whispered among themselves. Shaking heads. One leaned forward. Voice low but cutting. We fired the person keeping this company alive. How do we move forward without him? The words hit like hammers. Madison's fingers froze on her tablet. Confidence evaporated. I pictured Richard's silent scream. Empire never really his to control. Panic. Helpless calls with no answers. Every mistake from yesterday crashing into this room like a wave. And me? I sat in my apartment. Rain tapping the window. Coffee warming my hands. Calm in the eye of their storm. They could see it, hear it, feel it, and I stayed untouched. Patient. Ready. A text blinked from Elijah's right hand in operations. Devante. They're losing it. Richard's frantic. Madison is stumbling. Your move. I sipped my coffee. Timing. That was all I needed. By noon, whispers spread. Frozen shipments. Emails bouncing. Meetings dragging with no decision. Stock wobbling. Employees unsure. Madison's charm cracking with every call. Every unanswered message. And me? I stayed grounded, smiling quietly. I remembered late nights in the office. Dim light, coffee gone cold, guiding my team through problems no one else could see. Mentoring Ayanna, laughing with Serena when the system crashed again. Encouraging Tamika to speak up in meetings. Every ounce of work, every lesson shared, every ounce of care poured into the company. It all mattered now. My people, my community, had lifted this company as much as I had. By late afternoon, the tension became almost physical. Texts from Jalen. East Coast office frozen. Richard panicking. Madison in tears. You built this. Not revenge. Not gloating. Just truth. My network. My people. Our work. It all stayed alive. I walked into the boardroom like I owned it. Air thick with tension and polished wood. Faint burnt coffee lingering. Fluorescent lights flickered over suits clustered around the table. Richard froze, eyes wide, jaw slack. Madison's tablet slipped, whispers before I even spoke. I placed my folder on the table. Deliberate, calm. Inside, my lifeline. The clause buried years ago in agreements. Overlooked, underestimated, ready to flip the game. The original architect holds operational rights automatically upon dismissal without cause. I said, calm but firm. Eyes to Richard, color drained. Madison's smile faltered. The words hung like a weight. You can't, Richard stammered. You signed it. Every board member agreed. I said gently, legally airtight. Silence. Heavy. Slowly, the truth sank in. Contracts. Patents. My name. Stamped across billion-dollar assets. Richard's control evaporated. Confidence shattered. Directors exchanged disbelief. Investors leaned in. Madison's hands trembled on her tablet. Buzzwords. Hashtags. Charm. None of it mattered against real experience. Community. And connection. I let my hands rest on the table. All operational control. All patents. Mine. No negotiation. No override. The hum of computers. Blinking alerts. Felt almost celebratory. They had built a fortress on my work, and now, without me, it was crumbling. The boardroom, once full of ego, felt smaller, suffocating, real. I smiled, not gloating, not revenge, just validation. They dismissed me, underestimated me, but they hadn't erased the work, the foundation, or the team I had built and lifted along with me. I turned to leave. The whisper I had carried in silence finally spoke. Power is built. Sometimes quietly, sometimes through your people, and it's never really lost. The Monday sun hit the apartment window. Golden light streaked across hardwood. I sat at my kitchen table, black coffee in hand, the city waking. No commutes, no blinking monitors, no Richard pacing, just quiet, and my people, my team, thriving, ready for the next move. In that quiet, I smiled. This is just the beginning. We rise together. We build. We reclaim. I allowed myself a small, slow smile, savoring the irony. They had dismissed me, erased me in front of the world. And yet, the patents, the operational control, everything I had built with my hands and mind for decades, were mine. I traced the edges of the folder Richard had thought would bury me. 42 patents, over $1 billion in value. And every bit of it untouchable, legally and morally. My phone buzzed, familiar numbers lighting up the screen. People I had mentored. Teammates who had stayed loyal through sleepless nights. Crises that made us laugh through the tension. Global launches that felt like battles won together. Each message carried relief, excitement, gratitude. We weren't talking about salvaging a sinking ship. We were talking about building something new. Something fair, something stronger, something that respected the people who had made it all possible. I moved into my modest downtown office that afternoon. Sunlight poured through tall, bare windows, painting gold across empty walls. Yet in that emptiness, I felt potential humming. I placed a small wooden plaque on my desk. Chief Architect, Elena Rivers. My hand lingered on it. More than a title, it was a declaration. Survival, ownership, freedom, a subtle acknowledgement that the work I had done, the lives I had touched, the team I had lifted, none of it was gone. The relics of my past rested beside it. A worn leather notebook, pages full of sketches and diagrams that had turned into patented innovations. An old wristwatch, once a gift from Richard, now just metal and leather, a symbol, not a chain. I didn't need grandeur. I didn't need applause. I needed space to breathe, to create, to reclaim the life and career I had earned with my sweat. My nights, my community. By afternoon, I was already reconnecting with international partners. Calls, emails, messages, each one carrying respect, trust, acknowledgement. These weren't clients who feared me. They were collaborators who valued me. The lifelines I had woven over decades were alive, ready to reconnect on terms of equity and trust, not intimidation and ego. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, feeling the energy of possibility hum in my chest. The city outside moved oblivious to the quiet storm I had survived. But I knew, that knowledge, unshakable, undeniable, was mine alone. Not revenge, not bitterness, just validation, and a promise. Never again would I be discarded without consequence. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the rim of my coffee mug and warming the scattered sketches and patents across my desk. I inhaled deeply, letting the aroma ground me. The city roared below, horns, chatter, construction, but inside, the air was steady, calm, mine. An email pinged from a global conglomerate. They wanted me, Elena Rivers, as a strategic innovation advisor. My chest tightened, not from surprise, but quiet triumph. Years of late nights, missed family dinners, vacations abandoned, servers patched at 2 a.m, all distilled into this single acknowledgement of skill, dedication, and leadership. Not a handout, not favoritism, recognition earned, hard fought, undeniable. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and stepped onto the small balcony. Winter air biting my cheeks. Steam danced from my cup, blending with the morning mist. I thought back to the chaos I had left behind. Richard, Madison, the boardroom glare. They had thought I was gone. Invisible, irrelevant, but they hadn't realized that the backbone of their empire, the systems, the strategies, the people, they had always been built by me and with me. My hands, my calls, my guidance had held it together. Now, the horizon felt wider than ever. The offer wasn't just an office or control over patents. It was influence, a chance to shape innovation across continents, industries, communities, a chance to protect the people who mattered, ensure no one else was erased for someone else's ego. I felt the weight of responsibility, and the thrill of autonomy. I walked back inside, hardwood warm beneath bare feet. My office remained modest, walls bare, floors echoing, but it felt endless. Each artifact rested purposefully. A leather notebook of designs. An old wristwatch once a gift. My engraved plaque. These were markers of survival. Proof of the battles fought quietly. And the communities lifted along the way. Hours passed as I mapped out the first steps with my new team. Calls to international partners. Strategy alignment across sectors. A video briefing with innovators in Asia and Europe. Relief and gratitude in their voices was palpable. Decades of trust, now ready to be deployed on my terms. In a way that honored both expertise and people. As city lights flickered awake in early evening, I stepped onto the balcony again. A neighbor's dog barked. A street musician's saxophone drifted through the urban hum. Subway trains clattered below. Ordinary life, yet extraordinary. Freedom didn't roar, it whispered, and now I could finally hear it. Richard's resignation came swiftly. Madison vanished, quietly as her Instagram had once flourished. Their empire crumbled predictably, but my focus was elsewhere. My world had shifted. I embraced the responsibility, the challenge, and the quiet power of autonomy. I spent the evening sketching ideas, strategies evolving into action plans. The hum of my laptop mixed with the city's distant noise. Every line, connection, project, a thread weaving a new tapestry. Impact, I realized, wasn't in titles or accolades. It was presence, foresight, the ability to build, protect, and lift others while creating something meaningful. I leaned back, sipped my now cooling coffee, and let quiet settle over me. The horizon was vast, open, full of promise. I was ready, not for revenge, not for applause, but for purpose, to lead boldly, responsibly, and with integrity. This wasn't just a new job. It was a new life. A life that honored resilience, foresight, and the community that had always been at my side. The boardroom had taught me lessons that no accolades ever could. Through silence, betrayal, and relentless nights of work, I had learned the value of self-respect, community, and the quiet, unshakable power that comes from claiming your worth, fully, unapologetically. I leaned back in my chair, the worn leather creaking under my weight, and let the memories settle around me. The chaos I had left behind, the crumbling empire, the flustered executives, Madison's vanished presence. It was a story of hubris meeting reality. And I, once discarded, had quietly claimed my power. But the true lesson was not in revenge. It never had been. Not revenge, not rage, just clarity. Life doesn't reward loyalty blindly. Life doesn't always recognize sacrifice. Sometimes, you will pour decades into a place, into a system, into people who never truly see you. And sometimes, that realization hits you like a frozen wave, crashing over the shore you thought you had built. It's painful, brutal, humbling, but it's also liberating, because it strips away illusions. It leaves you with one undeniable truth: your worth is determined by yourself. I walked past the balcony of my new office, the city lights flickering below like a constellation rearranged in my honor. The air smelled faintly of rain from the morning drizzle, mingling with the aroma of my coffee left cooling on the table. I smiled softly. The lesson crystallized in that moment. Control is not about titles. Control is about knowledge, relationships, and integrity. It's about understanding the threads that bind a system together, and knowing that even if the world turns its back, you still hold the loom. I reflected on the countless nights of exhaustion, of work emails answered from hospital gurneys, of personal sacrifices made invisible by expectation and routine. Each moment had carved a scar into my consciousness. Yes, but each scar had also forged strength. And now, that strength became my currency, my shield, and my compass. I understood that life's truest victories are quiet ones. They're measured not by applause, but by the ability to rise, even when the world tries to erase you. There was another lesson, subtler, but no less profound: patience. It's easy to think that justice, recognition, or success should arrive immediately. But some truths take time to crystallize. Some empires crumble slowly, and some vindications whisper rather than roar. I had waited decades for acknowledgement. Yet the moment it arrived, it was not flashy. It was calm. It was precise. And that's the power of timing. The quiet patience that allows your work, your value, and your integrity to assert themselves in their own terms. I sat at my desk and traced my fingers along the engraved plaque: Chief Architect Elena Rivers. Not a name given lightly. Not a title thrust upon me. A declaration. A testimony. I realized the next lesson: never let others define your identity. Let your actions, your choices, your consistency define it. Let the world see the strength behind the silence, the dedication behind the patience, and the intelligence behind every decision. Never surrender your narrative. Own it, even when they try to erase it. And then came empathy, the most human lesson of all. As I reconnected with partners, colleagues, and allies who had weathered crises with me, I understood that power without compassion is hollow. Authority without mentorship is empty. My victory was not in watching Madison stumble or Richard resign. It was in creating a space where knowledge, loyalty, and collaboration mattered more than ego. Where people felt seen, supported, and essential, not disposable. That was legacy. That was impact. That was worth more than every title Richard had ever held. Even in the quiet of my new office, as my coffee cooled and the hum of the city carried through the open windows, I realized one final truth: life is unpredictable, fragile, and often unfair. But you are not fragile. You are not defined by unfairness. You are defined by how you respond, by the choices you make when no one is watching, by the integrity you maintain in chaos, by the courage you summon when the world thinks you are broken. And in that realization, a calm certainty settled within me, sharper and warmer than any applause or accolade ever could. I opened my notebook, the one that had once been a lifeline during endless late nights and high-pressure crises. Now, it wasn't about emergencies, it was about vision, about charting a future that I controlled. The skyline stretched beyond my window, alive with possibilities. Every building, every street, every pulse of the city reminded me I was part of something bigger. And I could shape it, not just for me, but for everyone I cared about. I thought about my team, those I had mentored quietly, guided through mistakes, lifted when the pressure felt unbearable. They had believed in me before anyone else did. And now, with my position restored and my authority undeniable, I could protect them, amplify them, and create spaces where their talents could thrive without fear of being erased. This wasn't just personal triumph, it was collective power. Our power. I traced the edge of my coffee cup, the warmth grounding me, thinking of the late nights spent troubleshooting systems, making calls at 2 a.m., ensuring shipments, projects, and dreams didn't collapse. Back then, it felt lonely. Now, I understood. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of persistence had woven a network of trust, respect, and loyalty that could never be taken. Not by Richard, not by Madison, not by anyone. The city below moved like it always did, unaware of the quiet revolution taking place in offices across the world. Sparked by someone who had been dismissed, doubted, and underestimated. And yet, here I was, calm in my downtown office, coffee in hand, knowing the lesson I had learned long before anyone else caught on. True power is built quietly, shared wisely, and wielded responsibly. I thought of the young black engineers, interns, and colleagues who would walk into spaces that had once felt impossible to enter. My story was no longer just mine, it was theirs to learn from. The patience, the resilience, the integrity that had carried me here could be a map for them. A guide that said, "You belong. You are seen. You are essential." And there was something else I felt, a deep, unshakable joy in knowing that influence could be compassionate. Authority didn't have to crush, it could lift. Mentorship didn't have to be performative, it could be real. I would ensure no one who had the courage, skill, or vision to rise would ever be quietly discarded for someone else's ego. That responsibility, more than the patents, more than the office, more than the prestige, was the true reward. I leaned back in my chair, letting the hum of the city and the warmth of my coffee settle into me. The horizon stretched endlessly beyond the glass, bright and open. The unknown didn't scare me anymore, it excited me. It whispered, "You've done the work. You've earned it, and now it's time to build something lasting. Not just for you, but for everyone whose path you could touch, whose potential you could unlock." Here's the lesson I hope echoes. Your worth is never defined by someone else's ignorance or impatience. It is measured by your courage, your integrity, your ability to hold space for yourself and for those you lead. It is in the quiet persistence, the mentorship, the support you give that shapes futures. And when you act with patience, precision, and vision, the world bends to the foundation you've built. I sipped my coffee one last time, looking out at the city, feeling every heartbeat in rhythm with mine. The horizon was vast, open, endless, and for the first time, I felt it fully. Not revenge, not rage, not recognition, but purpose. Power that connected, influence that mattered, and a life fully claimed. My story wasn't over, it had just begun. And this time, I was writing it for me and for everyone who had ever been overlooked, doubted, or dismissed. I set my coffee down and let my eyes drift over the city. The skyline wasn't just concrete and glass, it was a testament to possibility. And I realized something important: the work I had done, the nights I had sacrificed, the careful planning, the mentorship, it wasn't just for me. It was for all the people who had been in rooms where their ideas were ignored, where their potential was doubted, where their contributions were quietly erased. I thought of Marcus, my first intern, nervous, fresh out of college, unsure if he belonged in a tech world that rarely welcomed someone who looked like him. I thought of Tasha, a young engineer I had guided through her first product launch, now confident enough to lead her own team. I thought of countless others who had learned, through my quiet encouragement, that excellence wasn't just about surviving. It was about claiming your seat and holding space for others at the table. This moment, with patents and authority finally in my hands, wasn't just a personal victory, it was a responsibility to lift others as I rose. I opened my notebook, the pages still filled with sketches, notes, and reminders from countless late nights and early mornings. But today, it wasn't about putting out fires or patching holes in a system that wasn't designed to last. Today, it was about building something new, something that reflected where I came from, the streets, the mentors, the people who believed in me when no one else did, something that valued brilliance, integrity, and loyalty over charm and politics. This was my map now, not just for rebuilding what had been lost, but for creating a culture, a community, a space where people like me, like us, could thrive. My phone buzzed first with calls from old allies, friends in Frankfurt, Singapore, Toronto, people I had shared sleepless nights with, celebrated small wins with, and leaned on during crises. I could hear relief and excitement in their voices, but also a kind of respect that only comes from watching someone survive the impossible and still lead with clarity. Elijah, one of them said, "It's like the heartbeat was missing without you. We're ready to move on your terms." I smiled, soft and quiet, not because of the titles or control, but because they trusted me to lift everyone around me. Leadership like this, rooted in connection, in care, in knowing you rise together. The afternoon passed in planning. I didn't want to just manage projects. I wanted to rebuild trust. I scheduled one-on-one calls with team members. Not about deadlines, but about people, about their dreams, their ideas, their growth. I reminded them that their voices mattered. Their skills were recognized, and their ideas would never again be silenced by ego. The energy in those calls, it was electric, warm, alive. It reminded me why I had endured every slight, every dismissal. This was my community, my extended family, and together, we were about to flourish. By evening, my plan for the next month was clear. Control over patents and operations was one thing, but culture, mentorship, legacy, and influence were another. I envisioned young engineers, black and brown talent, stepping confidently into spaces they had once thought unreachable. I wanted internships, workshops, mentorship circles, opportunities that I had once had to claw for. Power without connection is hollow. Influence without responsibility is empty. And I had both now, in abundance. The city outside turned golden with sunset. I stepped onto the balcony, letting the cool air carry away remnants of past frustration. In that quiet, I felt gratitude, not just for victory, but for the chance to make it meaningful for others. To take what had been struggle, fight, and lonely climb, and turn it into a ladder others could ascend. That's the work that mattered. That's the power that lasts. Messages kept coming, emails and texts, calls from interns I'd stayed late with, junior engineers I had coached, community partners I had supported. "Elijah, you changed how I see leadership. Because of you, I finally pitched my idea." They listened. I let each message settle. These were the real victories. Not the patents, not the control, not the billion-dollar deals. The victories were in the people learning to claim their space, to rise, to lead. I thought about the Saturday coding workshops in my neighborhood, teaching kids who didn't see people like themselves in tech. Tasha, one of the young women I had mentored, called that morning. She'd just been promoted to lead a team across 3 continents. She didn't credit me for giving her the opportunity. She credited me for showing her how to claim it herself. That was leadership, giving people the tools to rise, then stepping back to watch them soar. I stepped onto the balcony again, the wind biting my cheeks, jazz drifting from a street musician below, neighbors laughing, kids playing, all these small moments connected. They reminded me why I'd endured those boardrooms, those late nights, those endless calls. The ripple effect wasn't flashy, but it was unstoppable. Partners overseas, Germany, Singapore, Canada, were reconnecting. but now with more than respect for technical expertise. They acknowledged the leadership, integrity, and care I put into every decision. My name became a signal, a promise that collaboration, accountability, and empathy weren't optional. They were how business could be done right. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the quiet energy of it all. The world outside moved on, unaware of the waves I was quietly creating. But I felt them, each life touched, each confidence boosted, each voice elevated. That was my legacy forming in real time. And it was mine to nurture. My team wasn't just colleagues, they were family. Bound by trust, shared struggles, and collective ambition. Every brainstorming session, every challenge we faced together amplified because it wasn't just about the bottom line. It was about proving, to ourselves and the world, that people like us could lead, innovate, and transform systems and communities without sacrificing integrity. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, feeling weight and freedom all at once. This was the kind of power I had always wanted, power that lifted others while protecting what was ours. That extended beyond titles, boardrooms, and contracts. Ripple effects, corporate, cultural, personal, and human, spreading quietly but surely. As night fell, I pulled out my notebook, not filled with crisis plans or server diagrams, but with ideas, sketches, and dreams. I mapped programs, international collaborations, mentorship initiatives. Each line, plan, and call became a thread in the network I had nurtured for years. Looking at the city lights, I felt quiet pride. The ripple effect wasn't about me being seen, it was about making sure others could rise, shine, and claim their space without fear. That was real power, real influence, real legacy. I whispered to myself, watching the skyline blink awake. This is why we endure. This is why we build. This is why we lead. Every step, every lesson, every act of patience and foresight had led here. And I knew, calmly, that the ripple I started would continue far beyond me, shaping lives, communities, and futures. And in that moment, I understood fully. Leadership isn't about control, it's about connection. And the connections I'd made, nurtured, and protected were stronger than any obstacle, stronger than any boardroom, stronger than any doubt. This was the power of persistence, of care, of resilience, and this was mine. The city had quieted down, but my mind was alive with faces, voices, and stories. I thought of Jamal, a teen from the neighborhood who had never believed someone like him could sit at a boardroom table. I thought of Keisha, a young engineer who struggled to be heard in meetings filled with polished suits that didn't look like her. I thought of every mentor who had reached back when I was climbing. Every friend who had reminded me that resilience was a family trait, a community inheritance. This wasn't just my victory, it was a ripple, touching lives I'd once only hoped to reach. I remembered the small moments that had carried me here. Late nights coding under flickering lights, mentors dropping wisdom between bites of takeout, and the pride in my grandmother's voice when she said, "Keep going, baby, you were made for this." That voice, that history, that culture, it wasn't a footnote. It was the fuel. Every decision I made now carried that legacy. Every opportunity I created for others wasn't charity. It was justice. It was equity. It was the chance for someone else to walk into a space that had once told them, "You don't belong," and to respond confidently, "I do." I drafted new mentorship programs, internship pipelines, and leadership workshops. I mapped out collaborations with historically Black colleges, community tech centers, and grassroots organizations. This wasn't just about hiring. It was about cultivating spaces where talent, integrity, and community thrived. So here's my challenge to you. Lift as you climb. Celebrate the people who came before you. Mentor those coming up behind you. And never let anyone else define your worth. Build spaces that honor character, not ego. Every time you lift someone else, you grow your own power. Now, I want to hear from you. Speech balloon, who in your life deserves a hand up? Tag them. Share this story with someone who needs to see it. Red heart like it if you're ready to claim your space. Rock comment below. How will you start your ripple today? Your actions matter. Your voice matters. And together, we can keep this ripple moving, strong, proud, unstoppable. Because real power? It isn't just what you hold. It's what you give. And the world is waiting for your ripple.